the pale moon shining on the fields below. The folks are crooning soft in love. You needn't tell me, boy, because I know, yes, when the sleepy time down south, yes, the soft wind blowing.
New Orleans native Louis Armstrong is widely considered the greatest of all jazzmen. In his lifetime, he was celebrated the world over. Yet, in his native city, the landmarks associated with his life have all but been erased from the landscape. Louis Armstrong was born on Jane Alley on August 4, 1901. The house was owned by his grandmother, and he lived there till around 1906. The house was torn down in the 1960s to make room for a traffic court building and NOPD headquarters, though the site is marked with a plaque. Armstrong then went to live with his mother, May Ann, in a tiny apartment on Perdido Street at Liberty. Today, it's the site of New Orleans City Hall. Between the ages of 5 and 10, Louis lived the life of a street urchin, hanging out in the Rampart and Perdido Street neighborhood. Around 1911, he got a job working for the Karnofskys, a Lithuanian Jewish family who ran a resale store and a tailor shop in the neighborhood. The tailor shop still stands at 427 South Rampart Street. The Karnofskys were dear to Louis, and he wore a Star of David around his neck much of his life, largely in tribute to them. On New Year's Eve 1912, Armstrong was arrested after he fired a gun in celebration at the corner of Rampart and Perdido Street. He was remanded to the Colored Waifs Home, a reform school located at Conti Street and City Park Avenue in Mid-City. It was there that Armstrong got his first formal instruction on the cornet. The home moved to the Milne Boys' Home in the late 20s, and the old facility fell into disrepair and was razed in the 60s. A city building has taken its place. Armstrong got out of the Waifs' home in late 1913 and soon fell under the spell of one of the city's hottest cornet players, Joseph Oliver. Armstrong followed Oliver everywhere he could, though he was too young to go inside the clubs to hear the man he called Papa Joe. Sometimes he would stand outside and marvel at Oliver's playing at venues like the Eagle Saloon, which still stands at the corner of Rampart and Perdido Street. Louis won a talent contest around this time, singing and dancing at the Iroquois Theater. It's still there. In 1918, Armstrong joined Kid Ory's highly successful band and came into his own as a musician. One of Ory's regular gigs was at Pete Lala's club in the Storyville Prostitution District. Lala's sat at the corner of Murray and Iberville Streets. Today it's a parking lot. Likewise, the Basin Street of 1917, at one time the district's main drag, bears no resemblance to the thoroughfare of today. Armstrong left New Orleans in 1919 and joined Fate Marable's band on the SS Sydney riverboat. It was in this band that he learned to read music. Armstrong left the riverboats and returned to New Orleans, where he continued playing with various dance and brass bands. In 1922, his idol Joe Oliver summoned him to Chicago to join his Creole jazz band. In the coming decade, Armstrong would shoot to stardom. The few Armstrong landmarks that remain in the 400 block of South Rampart Street are in deplorable condition. There have been efforts to restore the buildings over the years, but to this date, none has been successful.